Hello, and welcome back to MXTC, Masculine Excellence Through Christ.
You know what I realised?
What?
You're really loud. You're louder than me, I reckon.
No. It's only just for the intro because I was.
Because you're excited. You're ready to go. Oh, man, geez, I'm excited to be with you, Jake. If you don't know who we are.
By the way, this bloke got a parking ticket today.
He tricked me. You said it was like $300.
That was a typo.
Yeah, to be fair, I thought it was a joke, but then I realised it was there, and yeah, whatever. Anyway, welcome back to the potty. Your boy Zach, of course. Who are you?
Your man Jake.
Do you reckon I know who we are now?
Yeah.
We've got somebody else.
Yes. Watch where you're pointing, brother.
Sorry. It's gonna be across the screen.
Yeah. Who is this?
I don't know who it is. Some bloke we found on the street.
We are privileged to have one of my good mates, Larry Sukhu, with us. Hello.
Good to be here, boys.
Yeah.
That's it, mate. That's
Larry
it.
Sukhu,
Good to have you.
It is good to have him. Larry Sukhu has been a very, very dear friend of mine for a long time. He's currently my mentor in the spiritual sphere. And yeah, this man has had a very, very big impact on my life, my walk with Christ, and essentially what it means to be a biblical man. So welcome, brother.
Thanks, Jakey. Thanks, Zaki, for having me here. Glad to be part of your life. And yeah, man. Thank you for inviting me and sewing into you. So yeah.
Thanks, man.
Now, here's the thing. I don't know him that well. So we're going to let Larry expand on his journey, and so I can figure out who he is.
Yep.
Go for it, man. Who are you? What do you do? Where have you been?
Yeah, where do
Your testimony
Where do you
as well.
come from?
Where do I begin? Jeez, how long do we have?
What do you have for breakfast?
What do I have? What did I have? A man shake.
A man shake.
Yeah.
How masculine is that? You can't get any more masculine.
Yeah, mate.
What do you know? A man shake for breakfast.
Bro, stop the wheat bix. Get on the man shake.
Get on the man shake. That's
Get on
what
the
I
man
say.
shake. There we are.
Great.
There we go.
Good content.
Okay, about me. Jeez. Okay. I don't know how long we have, but here we go.
Much time.
We've got lots of time, man.
Yeah.
So, born in Fiji, the wonderful islands of Fiji, nice tropical. So pretty much grew up in New Zealand. And sort of how I came to Christ was probably not the way I would have expected, in the sense that, like, I have a mum and a dad, grew up in a family where, you know, it was very, I guess, like, challenging, like abusive in that sense. Seeing my dad, not the best role model, I could say, like abusive to my mum and all that. And so there was a phase that I think I was around about 11 or 12, a phase where parents sort of semi-split up, so because it was just too abusive. And then I think that was sort of the turning point for my dad, in that sense, where he's like, do you know what? I'm going to start going to church. So he didn't, like, my mum wasn't in this picture at that time. And I saw my dad sort of transform from the alcoholic, this heavy smoker that he was, to then just being radically transformed, giving up all those things. And obviously there's a lot more to that, but just as a sort of a short summary, like repented, my mum and my dad made up, kind of thing. And then that's how we sort of got introduced to church at that age, 12, 13. You know, started going a few years, you know, and actually really developed and, like, you know, read the Bible, was a good, like, teenager kind of thing. And then my dad became a pastor of a church, like, a few years later, kind of thing. And just like, we started up a small church. And when you turn 18, then, you sort of, it's a wacky ride. And so I partied a lot. Like, partied a lot, sort of did not have a relationship with God, because I think at that stage of my life, church became more of a tradition, and culturally it became a tradition. So in the sense that you walk into church and people will either judge you. I felt no love. Yeah. There was no compassion, no love. And sort of that really like put me off with church. I was like, I don't feel loved here. I feel judged. And and I think I went through several years of just like being isolated and running away from what God had me, I guess. Yeah. And then a few years later, I sort of came to Melbourne, and that's where my life sort of transformed. I think I got plugged in.
What year was that?
2012. is when I came chasing a girl, by the way.
On this podcast, we always say, don't change or don't chase the women. In this case, do it.
Yeah, it's funny how God works, right? So, like, you know.
Actually, we'll say that.
Chase the woman. I think maybe it just like, maybe that's what I needed to get out of the place that I was in. Because if anything, it's funny because you think like when I come to another country, chasing a woman that's not even Christian or anything, like you'd go the other way, right? You'll be like, okay, how are you even going to get closer to God? Yeah. If anything, the opposite happened. I got plugged into church because I had some friends that went to church and invited me, and I sort of got more devoted and started building a relationship with God, which then highlighted all the sinful things that I was doing at the time.
Trust me, we're going to get into the sinful things. Don't you worry.
So, and then, long story short, like cut off a lot of things, broke up with, the girlfriend at the time because I had this deep conviction in my heart. Then I was like, do you know what? This is not of God, and God has something higher for me in the sense that, it was hard. It was tough. But now when I look back at that journey, just the freedom and just what God has in store, or had in store for me and has in store for me, it's just been amazing, the journey kind of thing. So had to walk through it, but he never let me go. Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't that the right? There's always a journey that you have to pull through and be guided through just to kind of figure out what happened behind you is all part of the plan, all part of divine providence. That's
100%, 100%. So been serving in the kids ministry for about 11 years. So
11 years.
11 years.
I think he's in the kids ministry. To deal with kids for 11 years.
Oh yeah, I couldn't last 1 minute.
Oh man.
Mate, I've aged terribly. That's all I can say.
He's actually 13.
Yeah, I'm actually a teenager, but like
That's great.
But just love it. Just love seeing, I guess, as hard as it is, seeing the young generation just loving God, and just I've learned more probably from them than I've probably given them, I reckon. So
absolutely.
That's one thing I've admired about you for so long is just your love for the younger generation. It's just, it's really moving. Just your heart for young people, young men, even young women. But just you want to see just such a radical change and everyone to come back to biblical principles, which is what we're all about, hey?
Absolutely, mate. Masculine... I haven't eaten today.
Yes, you did. I fed you.
You fed me berries.
Exactly.
You fed me berries. Considering that you're involved in youth ministry and you're involved in that youth space, just a quick one. Obviously, we're touching on, the masculine side of Christianity. What would you say your biggest piece of advice is to young people are, and depending on how old they actually are, what would you say just to kind of cultivate that masculine part of Christianity? How do you start to navigate that with people, say for instance, who share your story and have a bit of a rough time with their dad, or that kind of connection's broken down? How do you build that that masculine essence within them as a young individual?
Are you saying for young people in general or men?
No, we've got men. Obviously, we're about men. So yeah, just for the younger boys.
Yeah, good question, Zach. I think I can only go by probably the lack of in my youth that I did not have, and that was like-minded people as friends, as a community. So, as a young person myself, I didn't have anyone to sort of turn to for those. How do I? If I'm a Christian, that's great. But you got to journey with people. Yeah. You got to iron sharpens iron, right? But if I have no one to sharpen my iron with, it becomes void. So I think my biggest encouragement for especially younger males and youth is to be honest, we go through the same. You're a guy. You're going to go through the same issues, right? Whether that's lust or looking at girls at a certain way or just anything that we struggle with. If we have people of faith, we have the community, we can discuss it, put it in the light, right? There's accountability in that. And you walk it together in that sense as well. And being held accountable as well, right? So in the sense that, hey, I'm struggling with a particular issue, but if you've got friends that are, you know, same values. I guess when you do it together, there's so much power. But when you're doing it in isolation, obviously we know a wolf loves an isolated sheep, right? So, so never do anything live things in isolation. Always be put into the light. Yeah.
And then that's a good kind of thing you raised, you know, doing things together with other men. Like you said, like the Bible says, iron sharpens iron. So being in a community of like-minded, church-going individuals really kind of solidifies that community of men that you have around you. And then you have men who also share your values, which can also help you through your own problems. Another quick question for you. Let me think.
He's got to think. He's got to read his Bible. It's his fourth day.
It's my fourth day of not reading the Bible. So what about your life experience has led you to believe the things you do about masculinity? So, you know, obviously, if somebody, again, has a hard life or a breakdown in the family, how does that trauma, quote unquote, lead you to formulate what you think about masculinity?
So what you're trying to say is, what life experience or past experience have you done that which formulate your ideology of what a biblical man is? Is that right?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, that's exactly it.
Sorry, he talks another language sometimes.
Yeah. All good.
Pig Latin.
We've all been there.
Pig Latin.
Pig Latin. Hawaiian pigeon. Hawaiian pigeon.
I think, look, if I just purely base it on my life experience, and obviously, and everyone has this story, and like I think, for me, yes, I've gone through, you know, family issues, struggled through different elements of things in life. I think when you you got to look at the Bible as well, like all the characters, certain characters. Look at Joseph, right? Joseph. And when I'm talking about Joseph, I'm talking about, like, you know, Joseph, Prince Joseph kind of thing, like in the sense that he had a promise, but he had to go through some hard times to get there, right? And I think sometimes we can shy away of like, I've chosen to follow Christ, so my life's just going to be easy. I think for me, what I've learned in my journey is, though maybe I wasn't following Jesus as much as the way I should have, those lessons are the things that I personally walked through allows me, I guess, when I speak to a young person, a young adult, or someone that comes across me, potentially God brings them into your life, and you have compassion for them, and you can relate, because there's depth to your faith.
Yeah.
Because if someone walked up to me and had no hardship or anything like that, and they're telling me this is what you should do, I don't know. For me, I was like, well, I don't know what you're talking about, because you've just had an easy life. You actually don't know my story or what I've actually walked through. So there is so much power in that. And I think God will always place certain people in your life that they know that you can get to them because of your story and your conviction and how God has delivered me in my journey in my life.
So on that, obviously we're going back to when you mentioned that your dad was an alcoholic and growing up in that family. What was your perspective of masculinity back then, especially having a father that was abusive and an alcoholic? Like, your view of masculinity back then to what it is now? Like, what do you think was that changing point? And what was your view of masculinity back then, which is what I want to know first.
Yeah, and I think, look, to be honest, I don't want to be harsh on my dad. I think he had so many good things as well. He worked really hard and a lot of sacrifice. And he had his struggles, and that obviously came from probably his own childhood trauma and all that kind of stuff. But I think how I looked at it is like, and it's just really hard to then, I guess, for me to define, okay, what's cultural and what's, what was actually my dad kind of thing. And I guess for me, it was hard because growing up, I couldn't talk about feelings to my dad, or this is how I feel. You sort of have to suppress it because they're like, well, and that's completely opposite to a Heavenly Father, right? Like, it's just like, no, you come to me with everything. Like, look at King David, like, absolutely, like, spoke his heart, spoke the truth, and but I couldn't do that growing up. But that was probably, but you can then see a change like with my dad, it's like pre-Christ, and then once he's at Christ anyway, it's like there's compassion. Like, you know, he'll wrap your arms around me kind of thing. And it's such a transformation in his life. And just this love, which was absence, like, wasn't absent in the sense that he would do things, but
it felt distant.
It felt distant, yeah.
We share a similar childhood, so it resonates. I understand.
Can I share yours or not?
Not on this one. when I'm in that chair, you can.
Great.
When I'm in that chair, you can. When I'm on somebody else's podcast.
What was the main thing that changed? Like, how did your dad actually come to Christ?
Yeah, so I think what had happened was, and he told me, one of the pastors actually got him to be like, read the book of Joshua, right? So we used to, in our church, used to have adult Sunday school and obviously children's Sunday school, right? So in adult Sunday school, they'll pick whoever, like, and be like, hey, you're going to do this month of this study. So he had the task of reading book of Joshua and sort of teaching on that. And he was saying one night when he was studying, he said he just did a short prayer to God. He said, hey, I don't want to drink anymore. I don't want to smoke anymore. And he said he knows the time and the date. Don't know it. Like, he probably told me. He said he never touched alcohol or smoked a packet of cigarettes or smoke ever again from that moment.
Just a simple prayer.
Simple prayer. And obviously he was doing things for the Lord. But it was a journey, right? It's just being intentional and being surrounded by people helping you in that journey. And over the years, you saw a massive transformation.
Beautiful.
With the conversations you and I have had over the sort of recent weeks, months, about especially catching up a lot, sort of about your experience at sort of my age and how you said, or have mentioned that you were pretty immature. Would love you to touch on that sort of journey from being immature at sort of our age to where you are now, and how you grew in maturity as a man. And, you know, you've shared what you were doing back then and sort of your mentality, but you're obviously a changed man 10, 15 years later. Yeah.
And just to quickly tack onto that, after you're done with that, if you remember, what do you think that worldly masculinity looked like versus what you are now, and what that transition of masculinity looks like?
Yeah, and it's been awesome hanging out with you and catching up with you, especially beating you at golf as well, just like to say, Jake. So
he's throwing you on the bus. Cut that one.
No, come on now. So, I think, and I do look at sort of the age you're in, and I look back at my life. I was like, oh, what was I doing? You know, my mid-20s kind of thing, and I was like, yeah, I was going to nightclubs.
What a guy.
Yeah.
Three times a week, you know, just
Monday, 3 times a week.
Tuesday, Wednesday.
Student night Friday and Saturday nights. Here you go, and then go to church on Sunday.
Wow.
The realest club.
Yeah, and then the funny thing is, right? So I used to play the drums at church.
Really?
Yeah.
What we've been looking for a drummer for how long? Are you kidding me?
You signed that off a long time ago.
Can we cut that actually? But half hung over, and like, you know, just like, because I think for me, I had to go to church because it was like, you're the pastor's kid kind of thing. And I lost there was no like commitment. There was more just no relationship with God. There was just more out of formality I would go. And I guess back to your original question about, just the maturity, and at that age, I was surrounded by just also friends who weren't Christians. So for me, I got led to the world kind of, this is what, you know, you have to do this because to be cool or to be included, right? And I lack maturity in that, but I didn't have enough role models in my life to show me what actually maturity looked like spiritual and Christian maturity looks like, because I had no one to actually be like, hey, that person, I want to be like sort of him, that he can be outgoing, but he's also got this conviction.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. And I guess that's changed obviously over the years. And obviously when you walk through things and the older you get, in theory, the wiser you get. So, but I mean, that's debatable as well. But I think when I look at it now, I've got so many good, cool role models, even in my life, that I'll be like, wow, okay, you're a husband, or you do that, you're in business, like, but you put the Lord first. And how do you, like, you know, how do you do that? And I think it really comes down to who you plugged in with, who are your people that's sharpening you and holding you accountable. And I think I didn't have that when I was a certain age. That's why I really admire you, Jake, is that you invite people into your world because you want advice, you want someone to challenge you. And I think that is so important. And it's not about like, oh, pick out all the wrongs. So, okay, cool. Hey, if I'm struggling with something, hey, can you take me on a journey? And obviously we do that with the Lord as well, but we need counsel as well, right? So I think that's important.
Yeah, and we're such a big advocate on this channel about humility, like Christian humility, and something that obviously you just touched on there. You know, he's able to just say, you know, I don't know how to do this. And like that humility is such a masculine trait to say, you know what, I need help with this. I need mentors to kind of guide me through things that they've obviously been through. So I'm glad you two are obviously on the right track with that, and you're obviously being a mentee and being a mentor. So that's something that is awesome. Yeah.
Thanks, and hopefully we can improve on that golf game, yeah?
I know, bro.
You need to mentor him in golf as well.
Well, he's the worst person to mentor me in that. He only just beat me.
I kind of want to, unless you got a question. Do you have a question for him?
No, you go.
No, I kind of want to I want to move the conversation into a little bit of a different realm. Obviously, I can see that nice sparkling ring you got there. You're a married man.
I am.
How long?
Coming up to 4 years in November. Hopefully I got that right.
You're in trouble, bro. You're in trouble.
Got married in COVID.
in the
so
dog
Married in COVID?
Yeah.
Four
right.
people at your wedding or something, wasn't it?
It was 20. Come on, man.
20.
Or it looked 4 almost.
With the marriage thing, and this is actually a question prompted by my girlfriend. What does a Christian marriage look like, and what does it mean to be a Christian man within the context of marriage? Like everybody has these kind of, especially outside being non-married, we don't have that context. We don't know what it's like to be a Christian man within the confines of marriage. So, want to run us through that, and what a day-to-day life kind of looks like to you?
Great question. Still learning, still growing in that, and still journeying with the Lord with that. It's funny when someone told me, I think my wife actually told me, this is like, is marriage is the biggest discipleship you'll ever do kind of thing. Because it really refines you. Like, you know, when you have that commitment, you are one kind of thing. Boy, you're in each other's day to day, your flaws, your things will just prompt. And you have a choice to make. It's like, okay, like, I can, like, it's like I used to do this, you used to do this, or you do this, I do this, but how do we do things together? It's like, how do we come together? And it's honestly, it comes down to a lot of communication, just constantly communicating. And I guess, like, for me, obviously to your original question about what does a Christian husband, what does the relation look like?
Looking at him.
Hey, we're looking at that one. He's a good looking one too.
It's putting God in the center of your marriage. So everything, we said this from day one before we got married, so Jesus at the center, and then, and everything we do is, we put God first in that sense. And I think it's about, like, communicate. So for example, like, you're not prone to the same sort of challenges as a man. If anything, I reckon the challenges go up, like, in terms of once you're married. I feel like that's, and I'm being totally honest here, sometimes as a married man, I feel like, you get approached by more girls kind of thing. Or, just the temptation arises because the enemy loves that. They don't like a covenant relationship, right? So they'll do anything they can to try to, sway you off course kind of thing. But it is then about communicating. It's like, hey, wife, hey, Melina, like, I'm struggling with this, or I'm struggling with pornography. Like, I've actually just crept into that kind of thing. And in marriage, look, there's a more shame in that. And it's just like, how do I invite my wife into this? Yeah. Because as a guy, you feel shameful, like you've let someone down, right? Yeah. And all I can encourage people, and maybe those who are listening, maybe our husbands, if you ever fall into that, there is no shame. There's it's about putting into the light and actually talking about it, because there's grace in that, and walking it with the Lord, but walking it with your wife and your spouse, kind of thing. So I think there's always day-to-day things that will come up, but I think for me, I guess, yeah, like I'm learning. It's just like, okay, I feel like the difference is made the more I spend time with God, and my relationship and intimacy with God increases, and it helps me become a better husband. And yeah,
because it's an interesting topic. Like the way I've kind of wrapped my head around this is like, the more I individually spend time with God, and the more I spend time in that space, I actually learn to love the way Christ loves, and then that kind of overflows into the relationship or into a friendship. So if you can spend more time invested in God, what overflows from that is just love and compassion, and then you're in a position where you are now outpouring what God intended for you, and like all your relationships kind of build on that, and you're serving one another, you're honoring one another with full humility. So like, I guess would you say, like, in the relationship it is about serving one another and honoring one another as much as possible?
100%. I think you're spot on. So more time you spend with God, there's such an overflow in all areas of your life, and especially in marriage, and there's power in leading out of your marriage as well. So in terms of if you're in ministry teams or you serve out of your marriage. So you're a husband first kind of thing.
Like, just before you came, we actually touched on this. Zachy and I were having a good D&M, literally on what you just said. So I said that I think something that I've learned over the past, call it 12 months, is learning exactly what you said, but your first, besides like obviously following Jesus and putting him first, your first and primary form of ministry should be a marriage, and everything else comes under that. So putting that first, and the overflow into your actual ministry, like whether it's kids' church or worship leading, everything else will sort of flow into that.
Yeah, 100%. Like the love and compassion that you can share with somebody that you see 24/7, if that's not a relationship fixed upon a solid foundation, which is Christ, then once that's destabilized, everything else from that is destabilized. Because, like, again, once you're married, it's two becoming one flesh. You are the same person, and if that's kind of shifted a bit, it'll just kind of trickle down.
And it's definitely something I did with my last relationship, was I put work first as my first and foremost probably ministry, whereas it probably should have been the relationship and cultivating that and setting the foundations within that, so then everything can trickle into, you know, my day-to-day ministry.
Just a quick one. You touched on obviously the lustful aspects and within the confines of marriage. Let's come out of that, because not all of us young blokes are married. So battling with something like lust and porn and those kind of things. How did you, look? I'm going to assume this. How did you deal with that, and how do you kind of how do you encourage other young men to kind of move away from that? Or how do you, how's your advice on that?
It's actually it's tough, isn't it? Like I definitely I was like, oh yeah, you know, that's a young person problem kind of thing, you know. But if anything, everything's just thrown at your face everywhere, isn't it? So just it's about, I guess, what I'll come back to again, it's about journeying with people and shedding it to the light. Like if you are struggling, I think we can get so caught up with the shame element of it as well, because it's like, oh my gosh, like, you know, I had this issue last year. So if I come back again, it's like, oh, look, I feel like a terrible person. But God has grace for that. It's all about just like, who are you in a people? Like who do you talk to these things about? And shedding it to the light. Like for myself, obviously, if I have issues with that, it's like talking to my wife about it. It's like, hey, this week I struggle. And if anything, she's actually really good as well. She'll be like, hey, how are you going? Wow. Kind of thing. If, you know, like
keeping you accountable.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah, that's massive.
Because it's like, how are you going? Or is there anything I can help you with? And, you know, it's a journey. Like, and people have, obviously, some people take longer than others, but that's okay. It's about what journey you're on. And like I said, as long as you're inviting people in that walk of that healing, and because and just talking to God about it, like, but hey, God, I'm just really struggling. I need grace in this. And yeah, I think like there will be there's freedom on the other side. There is, and I want to encourage that. Firstly, you're not alone. Like, it's such a worldwide problem. Like,
it's so accessible as well. Like, it's thrusted in your face all the time.
Nice word.
I had to throw it in there.
It's one way of putting it, but but you're 100% right, and I think that's why the more it's out there, and obviously, and the enemy uses that as, you know, how do I bring down young men of God kind of thing with this. So yeah, it is about just inviting people on the journey, like, and also taking responsibility as well. So, because, you know, we can't sometimes change a habit, we can replace it, right? So if I feel this way, what should I do differently? You know, how do I replace that?
And there's one other thing that, or two things that kind of help me in my like struggle with that one. One is fasting. I don't know if you guys have ever done that, like, or you do. You fast as well.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's like, if you can take away the urge from the body from such a visceral thing and kind of pray on it and like, be quite sensitive to prayer in a fasted state, that goes a long way. And the second one is, and it is a biblical piece of advice. It's the only sin that you don't want to battle. It's the one you want to run from. So if it's a issue that pops up, don't try to battle that one. Just flee from it. It's the only one. Just flee from that sin.
What do you mean? Elaborate.
Say if you get that temptation, or if you're on your phone scrolling on Instagram for too long, and then you get to that side of the Instagram, just piff it. Just get away. Go do something else. Go run. Go train. Go become a warrior for Christ instead of battling that lust. Just flee from it.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I think what you touched base on fasting, I think us in Western churches, we don't do that enough. Because that's a normal practice. If you look throughout the Bible and Scripture, like, we don't. And even things like, you know, when you need breakthrough or anything, we should be fasting. I remember I was seeing my parents fast when they go into, like, say, new Christians' houses to, like, pray for them. They'll fast before they go in. And it's just like, I found many things in my life that I've fasted for. There's been breakthrough, but I'm all for fasting. So
absolutely, like from my particular faith background, like it's a big part of what we do. So like fasting is it should be encouraged within the like you said, the Western churches. Just it's definitely a interesting experience.
Yeah, and then Scripture says no, if you fast, it's when you should fast, right? So
we didn't ask Steve this week. We didn't ask Steve this last week, but what does your prayer time and your devotional space look like?
I love getting a coffee in the morning, so this is what I do. Like
From Holy Toast?
No.
This guy,
no, good coffee,
bro,
too far away.
Out,
No, it's just my local cafe. Then I go to the beach. I have a secret place, I call it, and look at the ocean and just spend time with God there. I wish I could say I go every day. I don't, but most days I do go.
Like we say, as long as it's more than 4 days. It has to be more than 4 days. Or else it's no good.
I think I make that cut.
Good man.
This bloke goes when it's like raining as well. It's crazy.
He's a dedicated man. What do you?
And I think it's also important, like, we're back to the marriage thing. When you're married, and this is something me and my wife are on the journey, is praying together as well. That's so important.
That's actually another thing I want to touch on. Prayer is, I've said this to Jake as well, there's only one thing more intimate than sex, and I believe that's prayer time. Like, if you, like, how do you let somebody into such an intimate space, first of all, and then how does prayer life affect your marriage?
Yeah, I think once again, you learn all these things once you're married, right? So it's like, oh yeah, this is how I used to pray.
Brother.
My knees are welded.
Yeah, like obviously when I'm spending alone time with God, that is such an intimate space, but there's so much beauty and power when you come together as obviously one flesh and you pray as well. And we've noticed when we come together and pray, there's this unity, there's just so much strength, and it's just helped us in those tough moments as well. When you just go on your knees and just pray and surrender to God together as a married couple.
Do you pray with your missus like now, even though you're not married?
Yeah, we absolutely started making it a bit more of a focus.
Because I think I've mentioned this before. I know people, and you know them too, that actually say don't pray together pre-marriage because it's too intimate. I think I've mentioned that to you before.
You've told me about that before. But I think we've started to incorporate it, even if it's a small thing. Like she's working her way into the faith, or she's coming a bit more closer, or taking it a bit more seriously. So just baby steps. You don't want to overwhelm people with their own journey. So like I wouldn't. Do
you feel something different though when you pray together?
Yes, and this is what I was actually going to touch on. Like one of our pillars of masculinity is our spiritual well-being. Do you think praying together kind of offers that spiritual barrier around the marriage and kind of helps solidify and strengthen that quote-unquote one flesh aspect?
100%, totally agree. I think you just become more unified as well. And like I said, I can only speak about our personal journey. Like whenever we've come together and prayed on things that we're contending for, or just it might just even be like a pretty hard week kind of thing. I think when you come together, it just you put it before God. There's just so much power and there's so much peace as well. And I think we don't want to water that down about praying together as a couple. And even reading the word together.
Yeah, beautiful. Something I look forward to so much is reading the word. It's waking up in the morning, although like maybe devotional time is important, but having someone to sit there and go, hey, what do you think? Let's walk this out together.
Yeah, bounce ideas with each other. Yeah, that's sick. Like that's probably
like we do.
Yeah.
we like messaged me what time? Like 5 o'clock this morning. Bro, thoughts?
I messaged this guy like crack of dawn, just saying, hey bro, what do you think about this? Da, da, da. He sent me a message something like 3 a.m.
Love that.
He just wants to know.
It's good to get up before the birds, you know.
Yeah, early bird gets the worm. Is that what they say?
The word. Early bird gets the worm.
Yeah, like you said, that's great. I like that.
So our first pillar that we touched on. So how many pillars do we have? 8?
6.
Oh, 6.
Well, there you go.
Wrong.
We had 6 pillars. Which can you elaborate? How you can articulate?
Yeah. So each pillar essentially forms the basis or the groundwork for the foundation of what it means to be a man. Okay. So those 6 pillars are physical well-being, the warrior; sexual well-being, the lover; mental well-being, the stoic; spiritual well-being, the saint; wisdom and knowledge, the intellect; and the worker, career pursuit. Yeah. So they're the pillars that kind of underpin the framework of what it means to be a masculine man. So yeah, that's our pillars.
You've worked in the business, what do you call it, finance space, for
the banking industry.
Banking industry for such a long time. What did you notice the difference between you and then what a quote unquote worldly non-biblical man? How did you differentiate yourself? Like, what did you notice the difference with their mindset compared to yours?
Yeah, good question. Actually, it's interesting you sort of say that, because especially being in the banking industry, I'd say probably 17 years. And, you know, like, as a good Christian lad, you want to help people, right? But you got to sort of filter that as well, because you can't help everyone, even in my work. Like there's got to be boundaries, there's regulations, like governance and all that kind of stuff, right? If you started helping people and it's actually not going to be good for them in the financial sense, you got to. So I've learned over the years how to sift that, and you know, be professional. Like have to put my banker cap on, but also have compassion for people. So what I've sort of learned is, you know, like even if I can't help them at this moment, just give them some options and some hope. Like don't use certain language like, hey, I can provide guidance. And I think over the years, you see some interesting things in the industry, like you know, like without going diving deep into it, but the values are so different.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I just think like...
He just said he doesn't want to dive into it.
Yeah, but... clear, you don't understand that. But anyway, I think the values... I think the thing is, right, so... you say, for example, I come across a client and I say, hey, I can't do this line because it's actually not good for you right now, because you see the dangers. You're like, no, I see it holistically, using my wisdom and all that. Within, a week later, someone else does it. And you're like, well, like a colleague or something like that. It's like, well, did you not think of the well-being of the person in that sense?
It's interesting. It's almost like a Christian value is actually telling the truth and telling people the hard truth when they need to hear it. Like I said, if you see somebody that's struggling and you offer that loan to them, whatever, like it's actually going to put them into a detriment. They might not like to hear it at the time, but that truth is a value that you hold, whereas as somebody else is like, you know what, stuff it, I can get a quick commission or whatever from it.
And over the years, I think early on in my banking career, I would have done it. The more I've gone closer to God, it's the Holy Spirit. You just feel uncomfortable doing it. I actually have sleepless nights. Sometimes we're like, oh my gosh, what did I just do, kind of thing. And I've learned the hard way, knowing that I would never want to be in that position again, kind of being negligent and wanting to always follow the prompting of the Holy Spirit, because it stirs your heart up. You're like, oh, this doesn't feel right. And that's what's changed. The more I've gone intimate with God, all these things that didn't bother me before bother me.
That's a massive point. Like, and people don't understand that, and young men don't understand. There is so much more to life outside of what we just kind of our data sense. Like there is, once the Holy Spirit enters you, there's a perception change. Everything feels different. You navigate. It's like almost like a sixth sense. You navigate things a little bit differently, and the Holy Spirit really does work in ways that you were like, wait a second, before this, I was like this, and now it's a complete contrast to how you were. So there's a big power in that, being close to God, being sensitive to the Holy Spirit like that. That's awesome, man.
No, 100%. And also, just even to add on that, even just people you meet, it's almost like the Holy Spirit's prompting you. It's like sometimes, you know how you meet someone like, oh, I don't just like feel good about this person, or like, I don't know if they're telling me the truth. It's sort of the Holy Spirit sort of like warning you, or like say, hey, just be watchful and be mindful. And I think that's the difference I've sort of felt in my sort of working career. It's like, I thought 5 years ago I would have no issues. Now I'm having issues with like even dealing with these certain clients, because I'm like, I don't feel like comfortable doing things anymore for them. And which is so hard in the industry, because it's like you've got a KPI to meet, but then it's like you're turning away people, and it's like in the worldview you look like, what are you doing, kind of thing. But you really have to be like, stand on your conviction. And that
the first pillar we touched on was the warrior, and I just want your point of view on this, being I'll use the term wiser man, not older like this bloke. I was laughing when I was editing. The bloke's like, you're an older man.
Oh, he's 17, is he?
Yeah.
Working in the bank for 17 years.
The first pillar we touched on was the warrior, which is our physical well-being. I want you to touch on it, because we have very strong opinions or beliefs of what physical well-being looks like. You can elaborate as well on this and touch on if I miss anything. But us as men stewarding our body in a way of keeping fit, watching what we eat, what we're actually doing with what we've been given. Like our body's a temple. I know you love your boxing, but also know you love eating healthy as well. Yeah, I just want you to touch on your sort of point of view of the physical well-being side of things, because we think a lot of men, we're not saying we're perfect in this at all, but we believe that a lot of men neglect their physical health. Like they're just fat, they're just, sloppy, they don't look after themselves in the way that we think we should. Gluttony, undereating, vanity, all these things come into perspective, which us as men, we focus a lot on other things, but we don't actually focus on stewarding, especially older men. Like as we get older, 40 or above, you have kids and you get the dad bod, and then you're just looking like this fat slob.
That's going to go down well.
I just want your sort of opinion on that.
Yeah, and I think like the motivation for me is seeing my dad and his health issues. Because I know my dad used to be a fit man. Like when he was smoking and drinking, and then once he gave all that up, it was just like, and then he's got diabetes and all that. And I think my motivation in terms of, I think it's an important part of being, for me, is staying fit. And I love, because it's not only just like, obviously, I want to look after myself, but it's actually for me, like playing sports or doing boxing, whatever, it's my resource. So in the way it's how I wind down after a long hard day or a long hard week. It's like, that's what makes me happy. It's like burn that energy off. And I wish I could say I eat healthy. Like I try my best, but obviously there's days where you can fall into the traps, right? But for me, I think, we can be really negligent with our bodies. Like you said, it's like whether it's the lifestyle we live in or the world that we live in, where, rather than cooking, we can get, because everything's just so easy now, like to get and accessible. And to be honest with you, like there's so many contributing factors, like financially, like it's cheaper to get junk food than it is to cook a healthy meal sometimes. So like, no judgment on that, but I think we all have a responsibility. Like, hey, doesn't take much to be like, hey, I'm going to go for a walk in the morning or a run or a jog but we do have a responsibility, not just, and I know we maybe touch on the emotional side of things, but physical, we've all got a responsibility.
Yeah, this is one of those hard ones where it's like, and we've said it before, it's not a salvific issue, but we've always kind of sat on the premise that a spiritual presence also requires a physical presence. Like you can't be espousing values in this that you don't actually uphold as well. So while it's not a salvific issue, spiritual presence does require physical presence, and it's probably a great way to glorify God in that sense. Like, somebody who's in like the training space as well. How many people do you come across? How many people do you talk to who are struggling with things? And a good thing for us men, we're side by side talkers. We're not face to face. So if we're doing something together, how much easier is it to talk to somebody about something whilst boxing or whilst running? Like when we go on our runs, how easy is it just to kind of unravel things that we're not even focused on? So if you're in that space with sport and a sport endeavor, or in the athlete space, it's so easy to disciple as well. So. Yeah,
and I think like it really, it can be a multi-layered issue as well. Like for me, that was my upbringing, sports. So in a sports team, so I knew what the value of being in a sports team was, part of that community. For example, I'm part of a boxing gym at the moment. I love the community, and sometimes we need to be comfortable that it's not a church community, but you can shine the light there as well. Like, you train hard with each other, but also you have your own convictions and values, and it can really open up conversations in that. And I think there's so much power and beauty in that as well. But I understand people maybe have not had the same upbringing, or they've been caught into like, I've never done physical exercise before in my growing up. That's not what I'm at. But I think it is important. I think that's where sort of like gluttony comes in as well. Like, should we be eating the amount of food that we eat, kind of thing, and do we waste so much food and all that kind of? Because that's the society sort of we live in. Like when I worked in Woolworths, the amount of meat we threw away. Like, it was crazy. Just like
vegans would love that.
Yeah, I bet they would. But just like, it's just like, are we stewarding this well with wisdom? Are we trying to live beyond our means, kind of thing? And it's so multi-layered. But for me personally, physical activity or exercise is a big part of my life, and I feel like that helps me emotionally and mentally as well.
That's a great segue. He literally said the words that I was needing him to say: emotional and what was it? Mental. So this is a great opportunity to kind of move into that space. Actually, what is a emotionally stable or an emotionally secure man who's Christian? How does that Christian aspect change in comparison to somebody who doesn't have that Christian belief? What do you think your mental landscape is like compared to someone?
Yeah, and I think like for me being just a Christian probably is not like, oh yeah, I'm emotionally and mentally stable. I think you got to do work. So for me, culturally, it's like, what do you mean you're going to go see a counselor and stuff like that? That stuff that's countercultural, right? So, but over the last few years, I've been doing that. Over the last few years, I've done work on my emotional health and things that have come up in my childhood, like, things that I've learned, like in the sense that I'm acting like my wounded child when I was 7. That's how I've responded to a certain thing that's come up in marriage. It's very important, and I think we're getting bigger in society with promoting this with emotional and mental health. But it's really helped me. It's like, okay, if I'm feeling this way, if I'm responding this way, what is the root cause? And sometimes I've found out it's probably from an event that happened when I was 7 years old, and that's how I've responded, kind of thing. And I think as a Christian male, as a leader, if you've done that work and it's always continues, you're never there. You're always continuing, and you got to work hard with it, right? You can take people on the journey, and when you speak to people, there's maturity when people that may be going through similar things, but you can't take them anywhere if you haven't been there before, kind of thing, right? So I think it's very important, especially the world that we live in, the hustle and bustle and all the mental health issues that we face today. We got to be really proactive, and it's because back in the day it might have sounded like a weakness. I'm going to go see a counselor. No, it's actually, to be honest with you, there's so much power and freedom in that. So
it's exactly what Steve said last week, how important that is. But even like the conversations we've had, dude, it's like you said, like you've been 26 before. So hearing your point of view of, hey, when I was your age, this wasn't a wise thing to do, or this was a wise thing to do, with all the wisdom that you've had and the roads that you've walked and the experiences that you've had, it's super important that I never sort of thought about seeing a counsellor, but it wasn't until sort of you and Steve were like, hey, we see one, it's not shameful. And then I was like, oh yeah, maybe I do that. And then, the freedom you get from just speaking to someone that's professionally in that space, but also then, just playing golf or, I don't know, just going for a walk and going for a run and actually sharing your heart and be like, hey dude, this is my situation. Could you just speak into this? Dude, the impact that has on your emotional health and your mental health, it's crazy. And I think that's something we definitely neglect.
Continue on talking about quote unquote weak men. Like, it's hard for us to kind of
soy boys,
the vegan people.
You don't have soy milk.
You're not a soy boy, are you?
No,
you're not a vegan, are you?
Nope.
Good.
I think I did it for a month, and yeah,
I was vegan for 7 years.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah. Now I've got problems.
He met me and
I was
gonna say, me up. He gave me the
right.
meat.
We won't go there.
No,
that's crazy.
No Skittles people here.
I forgot you were that.
Yeah, I know. How weird is it? Yeah.
Wow. When did you eat meat for the first time?
Start of this year?
This year.
I think New Year's Day.
Bro.
New Year's Day.
And before, this bloke had energy. Now? Oh, dude.
Anyway, we're taking up camera time, man.
It's called content.
It's called content. That's
to
meme.
Know you, bro.
Yeah, meme content. I'm not in that chair, man. I'm not in that chair. If I'm not in that chair, then you can't ask me questions. Talking about the quote unquote weak aspect of masculinity and Christianity, what people will look from the outside into the Christian sphere is sometimes they can see that we're passive or simps or weak. How do we show them that or portray to them that, what, Christianity is actually a masculine belief system. We have specific values that we uphold. We hold those boundaries. How do we show that we aren't just those pushovers and that we hold some grit and some values there?
Yeah, good question, and that is the struggle, isn't it? Because it's like anyone can follow a broad road, right? What the world does, but it's like, it's hard to follow that narrow road, and not everyone makes it in that sense. So I think that the strength lies in your conviction. Like, I think that's where the strength is. It's like, you know what? I want to be friends with you, but this is also who I am, kind of thing, right? So I think I've learned over the years when I've had non-Christian friends in that sense, like, you can still hang out with them and you know, do all the fun things, but also draw the line where the line needs to be drawn, because they have, you know, and you got to choose who you hang out with as well, right? And be wise in that. But there's so much strength in there, with the sense that they know who you are as a person. It's like, we know who Larry is. We know that he goes to church on Sundays. He doesn't drink or whatever it may be. We respect that, but we also want to hang out with him. And I think to portray to the outer world, like, as Christians, our strength is just our conviction. Hey, this is who I am, and I'm actually not ashamed of it. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, just standing on your boundaries and what you actually believe as a Christian.
Yeah,
actually living out what it means to be a Bible believing Christian.
Yeah, because I know, like, even young people, you know, it'll just be like, hey, you should go, you know, like, it's just like, oh, you should have sex or something like that, you know, like, all that. You get those temptations, but your strength will lie in where your decision you make, kind of thing. And it's like, okay, no, he's standing firm, or like, he doesn't want to drink, great, like, he's actually standing firm, and there's so much strength in that. Like, people may say, oh, you're weak, but it's actually not weakness, it's actually strength, because you're not led by the masses, kind of thing.
Yeah.
When you were dating Melina, what boundaries did you have?
Don't dox his wife, man. You can't be doxing like that.
What do you mean, bro?
Did you say her name?
Yeah.
May have mentioned it once, I think.
Okay. Can't be doxing people,
Bro,
man.
Sorry, Melina.
You're on now.
When you were dating your wife, what boundaries did you put in place?
Ooh, sizzly one. We like this.
Listen.
I'm listening, boy. I'm listening.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, because we were dating during COVID, so we, you know, utilized the intimate partner rule where you can actually see each other, which, you know, was a blessing, but also you then begin to spend a lot of time. I think accountability for each of us, so in the sense of me being accountable, she being accountable, but also discussing what the boundaries are. We also read a few Christian dating books as well, which really helped us set some boundaries. But really, to be honest with you, as much as you read and do that, the more you learn and know a person, the harder it gets. And it's really a choice that you both need to make. It's like, okay, this may have, you know, hey, that didn't feel right, let's not do that again, kind of thing. Or maybe, like, you know, like, when we were dating, there was a curfew in Melbourne, so like, we'd put a timer on, so I knew when to leave and all that kind of stuff. But it's hard, but you got to then, like, again, you journey with people and bring people into that as well. But it can be tough, because it's like, oh man, like, you know, you don't want to put yourself in a position where there's temptations that will lie, kind of thing. You want to live above reproach, right? So don't, like, for things like, we're not going to close the door in a bedroom, kind of thing. There's no need for that. If we're going to watch a movie, it's the living room or whatever it may be. Like, if
we were living with people at that point, no?
I was, and she was as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think, you just got to be really smart and wise, because as much as the intention's not to do something, but if you're going to open the door for it, I mean, we're humans, and, you know, like, if they can sin in the Garden of Eden, they can, you know, yeah.
What do they say? Intentions often pave the road to hell.
So what would you say to someone who doesn't have people around them? You know, you're living on your own, for instance, you invited her over for a nice meal. How then do you keep accountability, because there's no one around you? Does that make sense? Yeah,
it makes sense. And that is tough, because you're not going to be like, oh yeah, don't, like, I want to cook you a meal and don't come over, kind of thing. I mean, it's a tough one. I would try to do like double dates, or try to make do a group activity or something. It might not be what you want. If you want to do a one-on-one time, just do it at a restaurant or something like that, or where there's public space. Where
If they get too close, just tase them. That's the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
Can you ask him that question you asked me today? Because I thought it was a great question about the fine line.
Yeah,
you asking a great question.
Me asking great questions. What
the fine line of being a simp, but also.
Okay. So we're having a conversation about being involved in dating culture as Christian men. I'm obviously taking you're single.
Keep going.
So in the sphere of Christian dating, there's a fine line between you upholding Christian values as a man, and letting the woman kind of or not letting her, but having your own boundaries and values, and also accepting her boundaries and values. So that can be quite a delicate game to play, where it's like, I'm letting her do what she wants and letting her set her values, but the values that I'm upholding don't match hers. For instance, let's use an example. She. How do I even explain this? How do I explain this? Within the Christian dating sphere, we have a culture where it's like men are called to lead and behave a certain way and have their boundaries, and also we are supposed to court and pursue women. There gets to a point in the relationship where the courting process has to progress. The process has to progress, and then what happens is she'll pull the reins back and say, no, you know what? No, I'm not going to do this. And then you kind of say, all right, I'm going to pursue. And then she says, no. Where do you draw the line and say, you know what? I'm trying to do my best as a Christian and trying to pursue you, but you kind of just keep recoiling. How do you get over that?
Yeah, and obviously I don't have all the answers. I can only probably speak from experience, but it's a where do you reference things from? Well, dating wasn't a thing in the Bible, right? So
it's true, very true.
But I think it just really comes down to each individual itself. So, for example, like for me, like dating may bring up other things for me, and it's like I want to, make sure I don't make those same mistakes. And whereas, say, for someone else, it's like, I've had no past history, so I'm pretty good with these. And I think it's just about talking. So what me and Melina did when we were dating was, I knew that, hopefully Melina doesn't mind us share this, but it's just more of an encouragement. Like, she was in a different headspace to what I was. Like, so for example, I've had a lot of experience dating where she didn't. So I knew as a man, I'm going to take my time because this is very new to her. But we'll talk about it. Like, I'll take time. We'll just do coffee catch-ups, really start slow. But then continue to still talk. And then got to a point where it's like, okay, I need to be a bit more intentional here because, and get her out of her comfort zone as well. And that said, and we spoke about it. Like after a movie, we actually spoke about this. Hey, this is where I see this going. What are your thoughts, kind of thing? And it's just about coming to a mutual, agreement, because you got to have those conversations. If your intention is to be like, hey, I want to marry this woman, well, you got to be intentional about what, to have those conversations. And sometimes it's good to have those conversations, and sometimes it might be tough for people, but it will, I guess it will help you navigate to be like, hey, is there something I want to be pursuing, or maybe it's not. Maybe it's just more of a friendship thing or something like that. So I think it is case by case, and like I said, I'm no dating expert, but for what we just did a lot of talking, a lot of communication, in terms of, hey, how are you feeling in this, and how are you just having a heart to heart, be like, hey, this is how I'm feeling about this. Is there anything I can do, or where do you want to go? Are you ready for the next step, kind of thing? Or
right. And again, one thing we've kind of mentioned on this podcast, and I think it's you that said it. Pursue the relationship that brings you peace, or go at the pace of peace, is what you say. And again, we were chatting about this before. the relationship should be progressive rather than regressive. If you are talking to on the phone or chats, and it's a brand new relationship, the next stage is, okay, we're going to chat one-on-one or in a group and that kind of stuff. The next stage is, we're going to make this an official thing. Continue. Whereas worldly relationships these days are regressive. The first thing you do is, I met them on Tinder, I'm going to sleep with them. And then it goes backwards. And the last thing people do is actually say, I love you sometimes. So I guess moving in relationships, as long as it's progressive within the bounds and within the context of what it means to be a Christian, within the context of the Bible, if it's progressive, then it's going to be at that pace of peace.
Yeah, and it's like, I think it's the commitment first kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I got a question.
Oh, you got a question.
Yeah, I got a question. If you were to go back to yourself, 26, our age, what would you say to yourself? What's the bit of advice you would give Larry at 26?
That's a good question, Jake. It's hard because, I look back at it and I was like, I've had a great, as much as like there's been hardships and stuff, like, would I change my story? But I think for me, if 26... Oh, you've got me stuck here.
Well, here's another way to think about it. Do you think the way your 26-year-old self has established a stronger conviction as a Christian now? Or do you reckon, if you didn't have those experiences, your conviction wouldn't be as strong?
Yeah, it's like I think what my story, up until obviously the age of 26 and what I've had to walk through has built stronger conviction. And I think if maybe things were different, who's to say what is, where the life would be kind of thing. But for me, if I had to change anything, gosh.
Not even change anything. What advice would you give, not even to yourself, just younger men in general? Yeah. Is there something that you're like, I wish most or a lot more men did this?
Yeah. Don't go clubbing 3 times a week.
Yeah, that's it.
Not good for the bank balance. That's what I can say. No, I think I would have matured a little bit by then. So I think surround myself with like-minded men and not be shameful of it, and try to find it. If I can't find it, try to find it. Be plugged into a community. Go to that have that, because if I could, I look back at it as try to have those role models in my life.
Just have a community of like-minded individuals. Yeah, that's great. And it's something that we as men struggle with, actually putting ourselves out there and say, I need other men that share my story, and getting a mentor and that kind of stuff. That is definitely a difficult one where we need to kind of act in humility. Quick fire questions. Favorite Bible story, character, who means what to you?
That's a good question. I would have to say Joseph was...
It's second week in a row.
Joseph's getting a lot of love.
Yeah, Joseph's just a bomb. No, just his story and just what he had to walk through, but he was, faithful.
Is that also the same answer as who you relate to the most?
Oof. Probably, yes.
Favorite Bible verse?
Isaiah 58:14.
Read it.
Okay. Isaiah 58:14. Then you shall take delight in the Lord, and I'll make you ride on the heights of the earth. I'll feed you with the heritage of your Jacob, your father, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken.
Beautiful.
It was a prophecy when I was 21 years old to me.
And what did it mean to you?
I look back at it and I'm like, wow. And then I shall take delight of the Lord kind of thing. I was like, that's how my life transformed when I look back at it now.
Yeah, right. Okay. Lovely.
Well, mate, just appreciate your time. Thanks for jumping on and giving us some wisdom, and even all the young men watching. It's always great to have older men who have walked the walk.
See, you said older men. Oldie.
Wiser men who have walked the walk. And just provide insight on us, because like we get a lot out of these conversations. We just want to become so manly and masculine, bro. Like we just want to be full of testosterone and treat women the way that we're supposed to, and lead by example.
No, thanks guys for having me on. I think just an encouragement. Just it's a journey. It's a day by day journey, and some days you'll stumble, some days you'll fall, but you just get back up again. You partner with people, partner with the Lord, and that's sort of what I've learned. And you're not going to be perfect, and have grace and compassion for yourself.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I appreciate it. It's definitely nice to have that wisdom come from experience, and then you kind of bestow that upon us. And again, yes, it is filmed, but at the same time, like you said, we're taking things from this. This is our journey as well. And if we can help other men, other young fellas kind of build ourselves in as strong Christian men, that's going to change the world for a better thing, So like, we really appreciate you coming in and taking the time just to chat, and it's definitely a humbling experience to listen to someone who has more experience than us.
And thank you for all the...
Come in this camera.
Yeah, come in this camera. The camera just died. Come get in here. Come jump in here. You can see yourself on this camera.
Yeah. So you're gonna have to pop your head through it.
Yeah, just get in. Get in. Here we go. Look at this.
Nice and cozy.
Thank you, brother, for all the insight you've provided me, all the wisdom. It's a pleasure knowing you. It's a pleasure to call you my brother and friend. Yeah, man, you're a blessing to me and now Zach.
That's it.
So, yeah, man, this feels really like...
This feels manly.
Yeah, manly.
This is very manly.
Very intimate.
Yeah.
Very intimate, exactly right.
Guys, hands above the leg, the waist.
My hands are here.
Yeah, I'm married.
That won't stop you. Especially with this bloke.
I'll try anything, man. Anyway, guys, stay prayed up, stay blessed up. We love you. We love you guys. You're part of our family. If you guys need anything, obviously reach out. We're not professionals, but we'll lead you to some. Larry's a professional. He's obviously
a
married,
professional banker. Shout out to him.
Yeah.
Give you a thing, a plug.
Yeah, plug yourself.
Plug yourself. Fit for
purpose finance.
Yeah, look at that.
Beautiful. We love it.
Man, he's walking with the Lord. If you need help, he'll sort your finances out.
Yeah, he'll make you pay 10% of the tithes. You have to pay it, fellas. You have to do it.
That's part of the week budget.
Anyway, guys, MXTC out.
Macquarie, always a pleasure, never a chore.
Always a chore, never a pleasure. We love yous. Catch you guys on the next one.
Love yous.